sat down, I was kind of frustrated. I'm like, David, I've set these expectations for myself. And the weird thing about it is I set the same expectations for myself last year, and the year before that, and the year before that. And I have all these goals that I want to get done. And I expect that I'm going to get those things done this year, but if I look back at last year, and the year before, and the year before, a lot of those things didn't happen. And here I am again, setting more goals and more expectations for myself, expecting that I'm going to be able to accomplish these things. And I haven't really made any real changes. And so, is that not insanity? Is that not a little bit crazy? And so that led to us talking a little bit more about, what are the expectations really? And I asked David, I said, as a campus minister, what do you expect of me? What should be the expectations? What goals should I be setting? What do I really need to do? And I looked it down. I'm like, I'm talking about my job. What is your job? What are you supposed to be doing? What are together you and I supposed to be doing? What do you think? And we ended up settling on this really interesting notion that I think if we stop and take it for what it is, begins to change my paradigm of who I am as a Christian and what I'm supposed to be doing. And my fellow brothers and sisters here, which is this idea of equipping the saints. That's a big change to our paradigm. When we stop and we think what it is specifically as a minister that David should be doing, and what I, as a campus minister, should be doing.
What that ends up doing is erasing the image that we oftentimes have of the professional. That our job is the professional Christian. And we are the ones that are in charge of that tougher, the outreach and the whatever, while everybody else maybe brings some food and says some prayers and do a few things along the way, but we leave the heavy work to the professional, as if we call in a mechanic because we don't know how to repair the car, or a doctor because we don't know about medicine, so we ask the professionals. Well, this is a different trade, but nonetheless, we rely on the professionals to do our work for us. And we were seeing that maybe isn't the case in the church.
Yeah, and I think that as we process this thought, at least for myself, I come to this idea of, and I told David this, I said, a lot of times when I think about, as a church member, not as a campus minister, but as a church member here, what I'm supposed to be doing as far as evangelizing and setting up Bible studies and doing this and doing that, I'm like, well, that's your job. Don't look at me. That's what you get paid to do. And then I had to stop and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. That's not really a biblical concept when you stop and you think about it. And sure, David has his part to play. He does the Bible studies and all that. But I asked David a really pointed question. I said, how many people in the last year have come to you and said, David, I need to know how to do a Bible study. I need for you to equip me and give me the tools that I need to be effective and go out there and do this. Because that's what God's expectation is of me.
And we'll see that in the Ephesians passage in chapter 4 in a minute. But when he asked me that question, he said, well, how many have come? And I said, 0. There are a few that are talking to different ones, but looking to improve themselves or the outreach and things like that. Nobody comes and asks, how would you go about doing this? I have this person I want to talk to or invite, and I'm looking to reach out to that person and try to share the gospel with them. And nobody's asking. But the question is, should that be the case?
Yeah, and so, this isn't a take a stick and beat everybody up over the head sermon. This is a lesson that I hope that we stop for a second as a body of saints, of Christians here together collectively as a family, and kind of reevaluate and reassess what we're supposed to be doing. And I think that it's important, and I'm going to give this over to David right now to talk, because I think we all need to be reminded and know there's a lot of good stuff that as a body of saints, of a family, that we have done really amazing stuff.
Starting last year, January 1st of now, last year's 2017. Hard to think that's all past, but we began with the thought in mind of making this a more meaningful year, if you'll remember. And for those over here, we had a series of sermons, several different ones of us. Craig and I were in one lesson along with Chris Miller, and the elders had a lesson, and some of the deacons had lessons and different ones, and we kept talking about this meaningful year that we wanted to have, making life more meaningful. And so we threw out the challenge in a lot of different ways, and I want to stop before we go into the text and say it was a meaningful year in a lot of ways. Let me just list a few things. We had 10 baptisms last year. We had 29 people that placed membership at Central. We had 14 responses, best we can calculate from our bulletin notes. It was a meaningful year. In January, we had a variety of different speakers every Sunday of the month, every Sunday of January, rather, and spoke about a lot of different things that they felt was going to be meaningful for them. So the church was sharing in this concept, and I think fully behind this idea of doing that. And we did a lot of things. We had, in February, a seminar on evolution. We invited a lot of people from the area to come to this. We had a ladies' day. We had power nights going every month, a couple times a month, most of them. And those, by the way, for those that are visiting, what that is a Sunday evening service where we spend a shorter time in the auditorium, then we break out into smaller fellowship groups, and that may be a serving group around here. It might be knocking on doors in the area and coming right back. We spent an hour in a little bit different way than what we might normally do in order to learn a little bit more about each other in a stronger, better fellowship way, and trying to cross lines there where the different age groups would mesh in different ways.
For those that don't know, they're called Power Nights. I think we forget. That's an acronym that starts for prayer, outreach, work, evangelism, and relationships.
And so we did a lot of that. We sent within our own ranks now a student that came up at Student Center. He is now a full-time missionary in Japan, Caleb McDowd. We've had mission groups going out to Nicaragua, to the Dominican Republic. We hosted teen singing. We added a new deacon. We regret losing one of our elders to death. We had nine UTC graduates, a Young at Heart's banquet. A CSC hosted a dinner. Renovation of the CSC, a small little project, just took, 4 months? And a lot of frustration on Craig's part. We had men's retreats. We had men's breakfast going on here at Central. We did a lot of different things. And some very good and important things that the church should do. And so I want you to recognize that was a meaningful year. But as we stop and think about where are we right now and what we should be doing as a church and as individuals, I think it comes back down to this idea of outreach and us feeling a personal responsibility in some way or another to effecting that. And not just rely on, I'm sitting in the pew, therefore I'm participating in the outreach that the professionals or whoever else might get on board with. And so, Ephesians chapter 4, Paul talks about an important thing going on. He starts in verse 11 with what God, he says, gives himself. He gave himself, and he lists these categories of leaders: apostles and prophets and evangelists and pastors and teachers. And these are great men in the church. And I guess comparatively speaking, it's talking about the leadership of the church today. Now these men he gave himself, in the verse 12 it says, for the equipping of the saints. It didn't say that those were the men that were to go out and do the outreach, but they were to equip the saints, as you read the rest of it, for the work of the ministry. So as I'm listening to what Paul is saying here, it's like we've got our elders and different ones that are leaders in the church, deacons up here, and we are lined up and we're handing out tools to equip the saints to, if it's a ditch, to go out and hand a shovel, go out and dig a ditch. And if it's nailing up things, we're handing out hammers and saws. And so all these different things. So our job is making sure you have tools, but that you're involved also in taking hold of the tools that God helps us get together and to go to work on this project also. So this is for the equipping of the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of church, of the Christ. And yet I know, not feeling frustrated, but I know from within just visiting with people, how often people feel, I don't feel adequate in doing that. I don't think I have that gift. And if you happen to go back to chapter 1 in verse 3 of this very same letter, as Paul is talking to the church, he introduces it, praising God, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places. Now look at that two ways. Number one, I've got every blessing I need. I'm blessed with salvation. I'm blessed with the fellowship of the saints. It is a blessing. There's no doubt about it. I'm blessed in so many different ways, but that every blessing ends up coming down to us being equipped. That I have every blessing available from God to be able to do the ministry of the work that these tools are being handed out to me. Now, if God is equipping me as a Christian, not as the minister, but as an individual, and He's asking me as He hands me these tools, I've given you every blessing. You've got all the tools you need. And we can couple that with what Paul writes in 2 Timothy 3:16, that all Scripture is given by inspiration of God. You remember that passage? And he goes on and talks about that it thoroughly furnishes us for every good work. So He's equipped us with the power of the gospel that can do everything. He's given us every spiritual blessing, and He's after us now to take these blessings and to put them together. So rather than feeling fearful, which we oftentimes are, guilty, when I feel like, should I say something? Should I not? And the opportunity slips by. Maybe next time. Have you been there? Rather than feeling that fear or that awkwardness or that inadequacy, oh, I don't know, we have to look at this differently. We can look at what's going on in the Old Testament. When Moses was asked, in Exodus chapter 3, God relates what's going on down in Egypt. And He says, Moses, I'm going to send you, as He introduces chapter 4. Moses was all for God changing things down in Egypt until it came down to him going to see Pharaoh. And then he starts in with the excuses. Well, and they're going to say, well, God didn't really appear to me.
We all struggle, I think, with that as far as, because I will come up with every excuse in the book. I'm like, you know what, that's not my talent. I just can't go up to a person and
that's exactly what Moses said. It's not my talent. I don't have the tongue. I'm not eloquent. And God's answer was, who made man's mouth? In other words, I've given you what you need. But you're right. That's the whole thing, that we immediately bounce up, but I just don't have that. And before we know it, the window's closed before we get a chance to step in and do something. True. That's our fear coming out. Strange as I was thinking about, what about Noah? God comes to Noah, and I would think Noah's task is a bit bigger than Moses. Moses just needs to go down and meet with Pharaoh. And I realize it's a risky situation. But a one-time meeting with Pharaoh, hey, God says let your people go, and there it is. Good luck. But Noah's got a lifetime career. I want you to build an ark. Wait a minute, God, nobody's ever done this before. There's excuse number one. Number two, I'm sorry, but I haven't gone to engineering school. And besides that, I don't even own a saw. And on is excuses. And he might even come down, and I'm allergic to animals, any number of things. But we don't see Noah doing that. But we see him methodically doing what God asked him to do, knowing that God will give him the tools to do it. It's that matter of, I think, putting that one foot forward.
Do you think that implies, though, that I like the analogy that we have all these tools, these spiritual blessings that He gives us. But honestly, and I look at a tool bag, and I'm pretty proficient with the drill, but maybe not so much one of the other tools in my bag. I can't take a hammer and hit a nail to save my life. can I use that as is that legitimate? Well, I'll do this, or I can use this tool, but I can't do
I have
that.
to learn to do those tools. Practice. You weren't good at it to start with, but, some people have a better knack at using tools than others, granted. Some people are better speakers than others. And guilty of starting out. I'm just thankful for the gracious people that would bear up with the lessons that I started preaching back years ago. I think I'm not that good now. I just think back 40 years ago. Anyway. But they said, good job, keep at it, You didn't kill yourself. Everybody's still alive when we left. I mean, we're not all proficient to start with. I feel like God's not expecting us to do anything that He's not equipping us to do. It just makes sense. When these businesses around here hire individuals or construction people or whoever it is, they don't expect that person to walk on the scene and just be able to do everything. But they give them tools and the training they need and kind of help them along the way. And I'm sure, are going to expect, at least to some degree, some kind of failure along the way. I've made some big mistakes along the way and said things. I've done some dumb things before. Y'all are witnesses of that. It's not everything accurate all the time. And yet you still love me just the same. And somehow we get that message out. The other place is not, to me, as effective as the sincerity when you're sharing that message. Does that not make sense? Well, anyway, I look at this passage and I see the tools being handed out and all of these things that are described here. And it's for the work of the ministry. And then as you go on down, it's to make us stronger. Verse 14. That we, he's including himself in this, should no longer be children, just tossed to and fro and every wind of doctrine. See, it's not just the outreach thing, but we see the church having, being overtaken, or at least being affected by different things that are happening in the world today, and impact of different movements, and all these things are happening. We don't need to be that way. It just, wind blows in this way. We start behaving like this. That we should no longer be like children, just thrown about by every wind of doctrine or by the trickery of men, but speaking the truth in love, we may grow up in all things. Now, verse 16, Craig, we talked about this in your office. The whole body should be joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the effective working by which every part does its share. And when every part is supplying and every part is doing its share, then the body functions like it's supposed to. Any one of us have had ailments along the way, and some part of the body wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. And it disabled the rest of the body, at least to some degree, and hampered the effectiveness. And what we would sought to do is to fix that problem. We may go to a doctor, or we may take pills, vitamins, whatever it is, but we do something to get the body working together on its projects. And yet I say this, I guess, in my thinking, is that still I'm not sure how many of us really see themselves as an integral part in the outreach part. We look at it maybe like an army, Craig. We've got the infantry, and we've got battalions of people do this and that, and we've got motor pool and all these different things, and they don't all go out and fight in the field. But every one of them knows how to use a weapon, if you've ever been in the military. Everyone has a responsibility of defending the country. Everyone has the responsibility of standing up for what the country's about. And I see us as Christians need to make a better stand in a kind and truthful way, in a loving way. And outreach to others in some way, putting yourself out there and doing that. Craig, I didn't tell you about this. I was just thinking as we were getting the lesson together. Years ago, back when I was in Oak Ridge, a lot of times on Sunday morning I would get up and I'd head off every lesson with, have you talked to someone about Jesus today? And then I'd get into my sermon. And I did this every Sunday. And finally, this older fellow, he said, you really got to me, so I was really frustrated because I felt like I needed to do something. He said, so I got one of those cassette tapes, that's back when you had that video cassette, of your sermons, and I went down to the nursing home where I knew they didn't have any service, and he says, I'd like to do service for you on Sunday morning. And I got these videotapes just like this, and I can play it, and I can bring the Lord's Supper to whoever wants to participate, and we'll have a service. And they said, sure, we'd like to have that. Some of these people have been asking for it. So he started doing this on a regular basis. Well, along about the 6th, 7th week, I don't remember, he was quite getting comfortable in doing that, and that was his ministry. Now, this guy's not trained in anything like that. He wasn't some eloquent person by any means. And he goes in one Sunday and plugs the tape in, and it locks up on him. And he goes, oh no. This is the sermon for the people. And it wouldn't work. And he goes, well, I guess we'll just read some passages today. So at the end of the fall, kind of fumbling through it, he got through everything and had Lord's Supper. He says to the people, he says, now next week, he says, I'll be back with another video. He said, if you can get the VCR fixed, he says, we'll get this thing going. For those who don't know, that's a video player. You know, way back in the antique ages, they had those things. Hooks up to the TV. And so he said, no, don't break that, the VCR tape. Just come you yourself. You do a better job than that videotape, which means you're better than the preacher. Okay? Take it. I mean, they liked him better than the sermon. And he says, so I just kept on going. And he just went and just found some passages to read that he thought would fit, and it made sense to the people. And see, he took one tool and found out it didn't go as good as something else, and so he just got another one. What we got to do is trust God to help us with whatever tools in our hands to use. So we got some practical things we wanted to start with here, kind of closing the lesson out here.
Well, before we get to that, I was going to say this. One of the things, as you're talking about, we all have a part to play. We're part of one body. Ashamedly, I didn't go into that. I felt like my job for the longest time, well as my adult life, was to come on Sunday mornings and check off my obligatory attendance for Sunday morning, and that's all I saw myself as far as a person who played a part within a church. And that is a huge mistake, I think, to look at it in those terms, because I was missing a much bigger picture, the picture that you're painting. We all have a vital part to play, and when you're missing part of your body, things don't go well. So I just wanted to
I'm
bounce
very
off
true.
of that.
So what do we do about making this?
So I had asked you, how do we, going back to the beginning of the lesson, talk about insanity and, it's doing the same thing. And so I asked Dan, what real applicable tools can we take away? Because we can talk about this until we're blue in the face, but what are some real things that might just, for once, change the dynamic of how we think about ourselves as Christians and the part that we have to do? And so the first thing was physical reminders as a real takeaway tool. And David's got some ideas about that.
Well, we shared some of these back and forth, and some have shared with me about some of these things. So we've talked about little things that would help ourselves be a little bit stronger here or there. And we've talked about Post-it notes on the mirrors, kind of a simple thing. You might stick something on the dash. I wouldn't make it a lengthy thing, because if you're driving down the road and reading that, it's tantamount to texting, and we're not supposed to be doing that in this state. It's not only illegal, but it's not safe. But stick something up there on your dash, or on your mirror, or on your laptop that is a reminder of who I am and what I'm about.
And I think we have a tendency to downplay that, like, it's kind of stupid. But, you know, if you think about the psychology of this as human beings, God understands a lot more about our nature than we do. And if you look and you think about all the physical reminders that He gave us, emblems, you know, when they crossed the Jordan and He told them to build the stack of rocks, you know, as a reminder. And so He says, you know, as physical, human, fleshly people, we need these physical reminders. A lot of times we discount it, we don't take it as seriously. But something as simple as a sticky note that you see every morning could actually change this year for you.
So here's your challenge. Number one, find a reminder of you. It could be a reminder of a person that you want to reach, or 2 or 3 people, or somebody that has drifted away that's not here, or just a reminder to be praying for these people. Something to add to what you've been doing. And now don't let that limit yourself, because God's able to do measurably more than you ask or imagine, Ephesians 3:20. So, but let that be the starting place that you say, this is different. I'm not going to play the game of insanity. I'm going to do something different so I can get a different result this year. And so get yourself a reminder, the physical reminders, but also the personal reminders. Craig and I have been back and forth, as we said, for each other. Sometimes I need some help in remembering things. Just ask my wife if that's not true. Or if you think, or ask whoever works along with me in the office, and the elders and the administrator or anybody else. I need reminders. I have a reminder I carry in my pocket, and sometimes that's not enough. Even though it has little pop-ups, I can ignore them. But people coming up, because I give them permission, hey, Craig, remind me this week, right here in front of the church, say, how's your list going? Because I've got a list, and I want to make a personal list of some people I want to see this week. So ask me how my list is going. Well, we're working on the fellowship room tomorrow morning, doing some work inside there, but we're still thinking on the spiritual plane here too, in addition to that.
And I think
so. I need those reminders, and if we gave this as a possibility for other people to say, find a spouse or a friend or whatever, and say, I need you to remind me every Sunday morning or once a month or something. How are things going? Ask me, it's not like we're controlling one another. And if you would pray for me about this, I want to do things different. I don't want to have an insane year. I want to have a better year, a stronger year.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of pride that goes along with that. There's a little bit of pride that we have to swallow when we ask somebody, hey, I need help. Something with the college ministry that I find is extremely useful is that accountability aspect of me asking them, tell me what you studied this week in the Bible. Tell me what scriptures you read. And I don't mind them asking me that too. Where are you at in your prayer life? How's that going for you? So really relying on each other. And I honestly, maybe I'm totally off base here, but I don't think we do a lot of that. Just in general, as a general rule, go to other family members within our own family, let alone, other church members. And, me going up to Johnny Owen and say, Johnny, can you ask me next Wednesday or next Sunday about such and such? Because I need that reminder.
Okay. All right. Kind of in closing here, I was thinking this morning of 2 individuals. For those that are visiting, I went to Freed Hardeman College back when it was college in 1971. I was not a Christian. I was of another religious group, but I found a few friends there that were worth going to visit, and I liked the school, so I thought, hey, I'm getting out of the Army this month. VA benefits are going to pay for this. It was sure a lot nicer than people were a lot friendlier than the Army. And especially out of Vietnam, I was in the infantry there. So I wound up at Freed Hardeman. Lots of intellectuals there, a lot of people that are very studious. I had a class under Tom Holland, for those who know who that name is. Tremendous teacher. But 2 people took an interest in me, and they were just friends. One was a theater major, and the other was an art major. Had they not been interested in me, I wouldn't be standing here today. What if they'd have said, yeah, no, he's pretty rough around the edges, just come out of the infantry, and I mean, his job used to be killing people, and I just don't think that's going to work. Catholic background, he's not. So my roommate comes to me and he says, because we were buddies, we were roommates, he says, hey, would you be interested in studying the Bible? And I said, sure. He goes, you would? I mean, that was a shocker to him. I said, yeah, I think it'd be kind of cool. Had he not asked me, had this other person not asked me some questions, I'd have graduated as an art major at Freed-Hardeman, and I'd be doing something somewhere, but I wouldn't be a Christian. Somebody took an interest, and it wasn't a professional. But thank God that somebody took an interest. And we need to take interest in the people we have connections with that nobody else has as best we have. And do something. Make it a goal. Get a reminder. Be equipped. And if you need any help, there's elders and deacons and people around here. A lot of us, the professionals or whatever, they can hand you a tool and say, try this, try that. And it's not as hard as you might think it is. You just got to get over that fear and just give it a shot. Pray hard about it too. This is not a stage thing. We've not practiced this. We're sharing with you. We've studied it and thought about it. This is where we're at as ministers, in hopes that this is even a better year, 2018, than what we had last year, which was a meaningful year. So, it's yours. Pray about it. We are. And tonight, and this morning rather, as we close the lesson, if your life isn't right with God, if you're not a Christian, there is power in the blood of Jesus Christ to wash away your sins. That's why He came. That's why He died. And that's what we live for. And there's our promise. Take hold of that promise, if you haven't, while we stand and sing.